you own a Mustang GT and you want to tune your Mustang GT, but you're just not sure which tuner to go with, well, this video is just for you. Hey guys, welcome to Red 50. Today we're going to be talking about different tunes available for your Mustang and which one I personally think you should go with, or doesn't even matter which tuner you pick. It's really going to come down to the customer service and the daily drivability. So here's my car, the 2019 GT with the 10-speed transmission, and I actually have a Lund 93 Racing tune. But before I got the tune for my Mustang, I went down the rabbit hole and researched all the different tunes that were available for the Mustang, including, some of the big names, Wengerd, Shoemaker, PBD, 5-star, Ortiz, and you name it, I researched it before getting the tune on my Mustang because this is my daily driver, so I was kind of skeptical on getting a tune that's not going to work for me and have issues and I'm not really able to drive my car. With all the research I did, I figured I'd share it to the community and really come down with, which tune you should be going with for your Mustang. And to be honest, it really does not matter. And you might be surprised by this, but honestly, it does not matter which tuner you go with. So the reality is our cars are naturally aspirated V8 engines. So they make 460 or 450 horsepower depending what year you've got. And the typical bolt-on setup will look like a cold air intake, long tube headers, maybe a catback exhaust, and that's pretty much it. And then you could do E85, but you kind of tap out there until you really want to tap into boost, like one of the ESS kits or Whipple kits to really squeeze a lot of power. Now with a basic setup, if you had turbos on this car like a lot of German cars do, with a simple tune, you could crank up the boost and really make some serious power. And when you're cranking up the boost, there's a lot more that goes into it. So you really want to make sure which tuner you're going with, and they know and they have the right experience to be able to tackle that. The last thing you want is turning up the boost in your car and the engine goes kaboom. However, that's not a problem with this car because it's a naturally aspirated V8 engine. So that's why I'm saying it really does not matter which tuner you go with. There's one thing you should be aware of in terms of which tuner you want to go with. Other than that, it really doesn't matter because the simple bolt-on setup, if you just got the cold air intake and a tune, catback exhaust, you're probably getting 25, 30 rear wheel horsepower. Most of it is coming from the tune. If you get the long tube headers, you get another 25 rear wheel horsepower number. And if you do E85 on top of it, you could go ahead and pick up another 20 horsepower. Now, I do want to be clear that if you are going E85 or you are going for a supercharger or a turbo, it does matter which tuner you go with depending on their experience and how many cars they've dealt with that are similar setup to yours. But if you're like most of us, you're probably going to tune your car up, maybe get a cold air intake, get a catback exhaust. Depending on the state's issue with the emissions, you might get a long tube headers. That basic setup will probably net you about 30 horsepower without the long tube headers. And that to me is the most basic setup you can get. I mean, I have that too, but that's a very go-to setup for all the cars out there. And when you have a setup like that, it really doesn't matter who's tuning it because roughly your horsepower numbers are gonna be within a marginal error. And you won't really be able to tell the difference unless you're at the drag strip or really trying to put the car on the dyno and see the 2 or 3 horsepower increase over one or the other. Now, full disclosure, I have Lund 93 Racing tune and we'll tell you why we went with Lund over others. But if you're really chasing out the maximum power, fastest quarter mile time, that's a different scenario. But for most of us, we'll probably take it to the drag strip once or twice here and there. This video is really targeted for you guys, including myself, and not someone who's actually at the drag strip literally every weekend and they want the best possible numbers on the dyno and the quarter mile time. So like I said, because the setup is so common, every reputable tuner has it dialed down. So no matter where you go with, it's really gonna come down to the customer service and the daily drivability. And then, because truth be told, in terms of power, you're probably gonna have very similar power levels no matter what tuner you're going with, if you're going for those basic mods that we just discussed. Now, the key is the customer service. You wanna get someone that if for some reason they've dialed thousands of these cars, but if for some reason your specific car has issue, you reach out to them, you want to timely respond. And there's a couple tuners out there, I'm not going to name anyone, but there's a couple tuners out there that are known for their good customer service, and you want someone with that because especially if it's a daily driver, you're having car issues, you want to be able to email the tuner and they can come up with a solution right away, maybe in a day or so, not ghosting you because they've already got your money and they don't care about you anymore and you're just a number on their income statement. And the other thing is going to be the drivability, which was the biggest reason I went with the Lund 93 Racing tune. only because drivability matters to me. It's a daily driver for me. If you have a car that is not a daily driver, this may not matter to you. Some cars or some tuners tune their cars to be pretty much having in drag mode, where even the normal shift, you will see the car jerk forward. And that's fun and all if you're really gunning the car, but if you're daily driving the car, you don't want that. And that to me is the biggest thing. You want a car that daily drives like a stock one, like my car does with the Lund 93 tune. There's changes with the tune, obviously, so if I get on the car, I feel the changes, but if I'm just driving around, keeping the RPMs around 2,000 RPM, just commuting to work, I don't have to worry about a 10 out of 10 race car. It just drives like a stock one. And that to me is the biggest thing you have to consider when you're getting a tune. If you're gonna have this basic setup, which probably also means you don't daily drive, which also means it's not a weekend car and you probably daily drive it, or at least in the summer and spring time. But yeah, at least that's what my experience was. I watched countless amount of videos. I've watched, a lot of forum threads, Facebook page groups, and all of that stuff. And that's the conclusion I kind of came to. They were all within few horsepower different, depending on the dyno day and all of that stuff. There's so many variables that you can't really say one is better than the other. With the basic setup, that's the key. With the basic setup, if you're going supercharged, turbo, nitrous, and all of that big boy stuff, you're gonna wanna get a tuner that has the most experience with your specific setup. But other than that, if you have a basic setup like mine, 90% of the Mustang owners do, then it really does not matter which tuner you're going with. And I personally would pick the one with the best drivability. I can vouch for Lund Racing. This video is not sponsored. And the best customer service. Also, I can vouch for Lund Racing because before I even got the tune, I blasted them with so many questions and their response was less than 24 hours. I wasn't even a paying customer then, but they were responding really fast. And even after the tune, I had a couple questions after that. Instant responses. It's not like they got my money. Deuces. Nope, they were on their customer service game really good. So yeah, that pretty much, at least to me, ends the debate of which tuner to go with. Of course, you're gonna have personal preferences in terms of the device you have, or if you know someone who works there. Other than that, for basic setup, you really want to focus on the drivability and the customer service. The rest of it really does not matter, because you're not gonna feel 4 or 5 horsepower difference, even if there is to be had. And you may have watched a lot of videos too where we have Mustangs basically with different tunes with the same exact bolt-on setup and just going against each other, and typically obviously one car will beat the other, and you may think one tuner is better than the other, but you have to keep in mind there's so many different variables when you're racing with a car that's pretty much evenly matched in terms of horsepower, that unless you know the full story of the race, you really can't conclude which tuner is better just based on that. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure you smash that like button. Comment below which tuner do you personally have or you're trying to go with. And of course, subscribe to Red 50 for more videos.